Okay, this is going to be part 3 of my pentagrams of Venus videos. Today I'm going to show you how the James Bond film franchise is connected to Venus and the golden ratio. I'm also going to cover a few other things as well that have to do with the golden ratio and Venus. And I'm also going to be talking about Revelation, of course, and Revelation 8:11, the falling wormwood star, which is the focus of my channel. And you should go back and at least watch part 1 to have a better understanding of what you're looking at here. But I'm going to do a little recap, review, showing you some of the Venus pentagrams and how it's connected to the founding of the United States and the 8:11. Okay, the pentagrams of Venus are a celestial alignment between the Sun and Venus, and the points of the pentagram are formed by Venus and Sun conjunctions, and more specifically inferior conjunctions. Each point here is a Sun-Venus inferior conjunction. And if we go back and look at the founding of the United States, the last star point before the founding on 7/4/1776, this last Venus star point was on October 24th, 1775. You can see here the Sun and the Venus are lined up here in conjunction. And if we go to this website here, astropro.com, and we look at the Venus-Sun conjunctions, if we look at October 24th, 1775, this would be the inferior conjunction that forms the star point. The next date, August 11th or 8/11/1776, that was a superior conjunction. And I'll show you guys the difference here in a second. So then the first star point after the founding was June 1st, 1777. Or you can go here and just find the dates where Venus and the Sun are at the same ecliptic longitude. What I wanted to show here was that the first star point the United States was founded on the 8th month and 11th day after a star point of Venus, a total span of 8 months, 11 days. And then the next star point, or the next conjunction I should say, of Venus and the Sun was on 8/11. And this little chart here, graphic, shows you the perspective from Earth on what the star points are. If Venus appears to be on the inside or between the Earth and the Sun, this is the inferior conjunction that forms the star point. And then when it's on the opposite side of the Sun in conjunction, this is a superior conjunction. But this is what we are looking at that forms the Venus pentagram, the inferior side. But something that's interesting about that superior conjunction that happened on 8/11, the Venus to Earth ratio that forms the pentagram is 13:8, and if we look at the founding date to the next Venus-Sun conjunction, it was 10.38% of a year, just like the orbital ratio between Venus and Earth. It's kind of interesting. And of course, the reason we're looking at the pentagram is because the pentagram itself, the intersecting lines, form the golden ratio, or phi, the divine ratio, 1.618. Each intersecting line of the star or chord forms the golden ratio. So now we're going to take a look at the James Bond movie franchise and how the 007 comes into play with Venus and the golden ratio. And the Bobby Simpson channel. He and I have been talking about Venus for quite a while. And he has helped me out a lot with the Venus coding. And so a lot of credit goes to him for helping me with this. He's very sharp with the astrology and the astronomical alignments that are generally the source of most of these rituals that we look at. So if we look here at the what would be the intro, most of the intros of the James Bond franchise start with this view looking down the spiral or rifled gun barrel. And there's two things that they're referencing here. One, the Fibonacci spiral, or the Fibonacci sequence. And the second is the blood or DNA part of it. And the reason that is that DNA also takes on the form of a spiral, the double helix. So we have our DNA and blood reference here as well when we look at the intro to this famous intro to James Bond movies. And the reason here we have the bullets, right? The bullets are causing the blood here, our DNA or blood reference. Predominantly, most bullets are copper-jacketed lead, and that's an alchemical ritual. The alchemical metals of Venus and Saturn are copper and lead, so that's why we have the lead and copper bullet for our James Bond reference here. And Venus and Saturn, definitely two of the most encoded and ritualized planets in this study that we're looking at here. So if we look at the Venus to Earth orbital ratio, it's 13:8. And if we take 13 divided by 8, it's 1.625, which is an approximation of phi, or the golden ratio. And when we subtract the 1.618 golden ratio, we're left with 0.007. So the Venus to Earth orbit ratio, the difference between the actual golden ratio and the approximation, is 007. So that's why we have James Bond as the 007 agent. And here I have GoldenEye. This was the first film that Pierce Brosnan starred in, and it was released in 1995. And I've showed you this in the last video, but the founding year plus 219 is 1995. And that goes back to Revelation 13:8. The Venus to Earth ratio. This is the 219th verse of Revelation. And I'll show you some more 219 and golden ratio Revelation references here also in this video. But that's why it was released in 1995. And if we look here at the intro to GoldenEye, we have the woman here making the 5-pointed star. There's an actual 5-pointed star in the intro as well. Okay, so this is the very first Bond girl. And in the film Dr. No, her name was Honey Rider. And I'll show you this real quick. If we look under the mythology of Venus, I'm going to read you a quick excerpt here. And then you'll understand why they named her Honey. The rites allowed women to drink the strongest sacrificial wine otherwise reserved for the Roman gods and Roman men. The women euphemistically referred to it as honey. Under these special circumstances, they could get virtuously and religiously drunk on strong wine, safe from Venus temptations. Outside of this context, ordinary wine, that is Venus wine, tinctured with myrtle oil, was thought particularly suitable for women. So the sacrificial wine of Venus, this wine was called honey. So the very first Bond girl's name was Honey Rider. You can see here she's holding seashells, and a seashell encodes the golden ratio, or phi. The Fibonacci sequence encodes the golden ratio. And if we look at the Dr. No film casting here on Wikipedia, the actress's name was Ursula Andress. And right in the description, it said she was a local shell diver, making a living by selling Jamaican seashells. So they're just making sure that the point is across, that she is a representation of Venus and the golden ratio. The rose that feeds the bees, and Venus is known as the rose. The rose petals themselves also follow the golden ratio. And just last month, on 9/11, 2019, CNN posted this article, and it was from the GoldenEye actor Pierce Brosnan. On Monday, beloved 1990s 007 Pierce Brosnan lent his voice to the chorus calling for a female James Bond. And the reason they did this on 9/11, showed this in the last video, but if we split the 404 verses of Revelation into the golden ratio, or the closest approximation of the golden ratio, we have 154 and 250. That's our closest approximation we can get with the 404 verses of Revelation. And the 154th verse of Revelation is 9/11. So that's why they had Pierce Brosnan. His first James Bond role was GoldenEye. That's why we had him on 9/11. Talking about a female James Bond. And what's interesting about this female James Bond is that her name is Lashana Lynch, this actress here, and she became famous, or one of the roles she became famous for was the character Rosalind Capulet, which is another Venus reference, the rose, in a television series or a television show called Still Star-Crossed, right? And Wormwood is the planet of the crossing. So they're encoding Venus here as well, the rose. And she was also in the movie Captain Marvel. And I talked about Captain Marvel in my last video, how it's encoded with Venus as well. Captain Marvel was set in 1995, which goes back to our 219th verse of Revelation. So if you look here at the Golden Gate Bridge, there's more to this. I showed this slide in the last video. The visual magnitude of Venus is 4.14, and we have our construction begin and construction end of the Golden Gate Bridge, 4 years, 104 days. And Venus is 81 in ordinal gematria. And you can see here the construction ended on 4/19. And the 81st prime is 4/19. But here is where this 2/19 comes into play here. And it's reference to Revelation 13:8, the 219th verse. If you look at the Golden Gate Bridge here, we have the construction start, construction end, and then the bridge actually opened on May 27th, 1937. And this date here, 5/16/1979. From the opening of the Golden Gate to 5/16/1979 was a total span of 2,190 weeks for your 219 here. And what makes this a 100% ritual to Venus and the golden ratio and the verse of Revelation, the 219th verse of Revelation. If we look at this date here, 5/16/79, (5/16/1979) was 2/19 on the Hebrew calendar as well. So total of 2,190 weeks after the opening was 2/19 on the Hebrew calendar. If we look here at the all-time gold price high, there's a little bit of discrepancy in some of these dates, but the most generally accepted all-time gold price high was on August 23rd, 2011. So the all-time gold price high plus 1 year, 6 months, 18 days, our golden ratio, 3/13/2013. That was the day that Pope Francis was selected for the papacy, March 13th, 2013. A golden ratio or gold ritual. Here we have Venus and the Queen. The Venus and Sun transit on June 8th, 2004. On this date, Queen Elizabeth II was exactly 4,077 weeks old. On that day, she was 4,077 weeks. And that connects to our 24th star number, our 6-pointed star. 477 minutes is 33.13% of a day. And that goes to our Revelation 6:12, 8:11, and 9:11. The 33 and 13 verses on each side of the Revelation 8:11 Wormwood Star. And I'm going to do my next video just I've been wanting to show you this for a while, but I'm going to just, I guess, for once and for all, show you the most, I guess, the ultimate ritual to the 24th star number, the 3313 and the Star of David. I can't believe it took me so long to figure it out, but it's so obvious once you see it. Such a huge ritual to this Revelation 6:12 to 9:11 relationship here. But I'll show you guys that in another video. And also, coming up here, I had this slide at the end of part 1. But I have here the arrival of Venus. Of course, Venus here, the pentagram, most often associated with the goat head or Baphomet. And we have the goat constellation Capricorn. And on 12/19/2019, Venus is going to enter Capricorn on 12/19/2019. And there's a lot of connections to this date. And it also connects to this, the 3313. And I have here the falling wormwood star as the capstone. And I call this, the next video that I do with the 1388 is going to be about calendar synchronization. And it has to do with the Great Pyramid, the height of the Great Pyramid, which is 138.8 meters. It has to do with this coding with the 3313. And it also has to do with the Capricorn constellation. So, try to get those videos out to you as soon as I can. I'm very far behind. I have a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to step up and get some more content out for you guys. But just wanted to show you the 007, how the whole film franchise is based on Venus and the golden ratio. And there's a lot more to this, of course. I'm just showing you the real bare bones basics, but okay guys, thanks for watching.